Fala galera, tudo bem com vocês? No vídeo de hoje eu quero mostrar como que os gringos estão vendo o futebol brasileiro, né? Como que eles estão reagindo à nova tática do Fluminense, né? O novo técnico também da seleção brasileira. E o que tá essa relação do relacionismo entre o jogador e o futebol, né? Então, a gente vê que eu mudei aqui, né, o público-alvo do meu canal, né? E eu vou trazer agora vídeos sobre futebol, né? Então a gente vai começar primeiro com esse vídeo aqui, reagindo ao que ele tá dizendo, né, sobre o futebol brasileiro, a tática do futebol brasileiro.
Imagine football tactics as a spectrum. On one end is chaos, and on the other end is order. Through the years, the balance has constantly shifted from one approach to the other, from the all-out attack of the 1-2-7 formation, to the birth of organized systems such as the WM, from Dutch total football to Saki's defensive principle. The equilibrium in football is always shifting as teams look to find the upper hand, with each new approach shifting the needle further and further out into unexplored territory. Over the past 15 years, the system has shifted once more, and the dominance of positional play has pushed the whole tactical landscape further and further towards order, transforming the broad world of football into a game of chess. Creativity gave way to structure, and the ideas of the manager were seen as more important than the quality of the players. But what if I told you there was a new philosophy that doesn't care about chess, structure, or ideas, and is more concerned about the individual relationships between the players, creating emerging structures completely different from each other every time they attack, giving power back to the player, and pushing the balance back towards chaos. And that philosophy is relationism.
Você vê que ele retratou aqui, né, bastante falando sobre o jogador que fica parado em posição, né, igual aquele 4x4, 4-3-3. Ele tá falando basicamente sobre a posição de jogadores, né, a ordem, jogador bem estabilizado, como que o time europeu normalmente joga. Caos é basicamente como que o time brasileiro normalmente jogava, né, a gente vê que o jogador tenta mais resolver no individual, né, um jogador como o Neymar, jogador como o Ronaldinho Gaúcho, Kaká, Ronaldo, a gente vê que exatamente o que está acontecendo, né? O pessoal está cada vez mais estendendo aí, né, para a ordem, né? A gente vê que até mesmo a seleção brasileira estava indo mais para a ordem, né? Nas últimas escalações da seleção brasileira, só jogador europeu, né, que jogava no time europeu. Vamos continuar aqui, ó.
Welcome back to Football Meta. So I had to do a ton of research for this topic, so check the resources down below if you want to know more information on relationism. All stats in this video are brought to you by Soccerman, so check out their brand new X-Value platform for advanced metrics for teams and players from over 17 different leagues across the globe. The link is in the description down below. Let's start with a brief description. Relationism can also be referred to as functional play, and is an emerging philosophy that changes the way a team is structured on the pitch. In its essence, it embraces the chaos of a match. But to understand why it's so unique, it's important to understand what the current most used setup is. The vast majority of teams, especially in Europe, now use positional play as their foundation, made popular.
Exatamente o que eu falei, né? Atualmente a gente vê na Europa, né, os melhores times jogando assim, né? Barcelona, a gente pega o time da Inglaterra, o time da Inglaterra tá vindo forte agora, Manchester City, né? Todos são basicamente assim, né? Eles jogam com jogadores pré-estabelecidos, em cada posição parada, né? Então ele tá explicando exatamente isso para nós, né?
Popular by Guardiola, but used by managers such as Xavi, Arteta, Sarri, and Tuchel, to name a few. The main idea of positional play is that it prescribes players with designated zones, and each individual movement serves the structure of the whole team. Let's take Guardiola's well-known pitch zones as an example. Whilst it is slightly outdated, it does help explain the core principles of the positional school of thought. One rule he sets his players is that there can be no more than 3 players in each horizontal zone, and no more than 2 players in each vertical zone, ensuring the team has cover all over the pitch. With Guardiola, and why his teams are considered to be extremely fluid, is because he is not concerned about which player occupies which position, and the players are free to rotate within this structure. For example, in the opposition's half, a positional play team often resembles a 3-2-5, with players in these designated areas. It doesn't matter which player is in the half space. What matters is that there is a player in the half space. Why this is so effective is because it allows players to know without thinking that a teammate will be in a specific position at a specific time, meaning they spend less mental energy on making a decision, and can focus more on the accuracy and precision of their play, making their whole thought process a lot more automatic. This is why modern football tactics are often compared to chess, as managers know which spaces will be left vacant, and it's up to the players to be able to exploit them. Over time, this has led.
A gente viu aqui, né, basicamente, que ele cria um vácuo, né, como tá bem espaçado aqui os jogadores, né, pra ele passar a bola, o jogo basicamente dele é nesse tipo de passe de bola, pra criar um espaço e ir pro ataque, né, ele tá basicamente explorando o espaço que vai ser criado graças a ele tá bem espalhado os jogadores pelo campo. Na hora que tem um passe, ele vai espalhar também a defesa do outro time. Com isso, eles vão atacar, né? Basicamente isso.
Of specific plays. Teams like De Zerbi's Brighton execute extremely accurate passing maneuvers.
Basicamente é o que eu falei, né? É o passe que vai liberar o espaço e vai dar a chance para ele dar o ataque, né?
Because the players know that a specific sequence of passes will free up a player in a more dangerous position. But while this scripting can be beneficial, it does also come into some heavy criticism. One of the biggest complaints is that it's removed a certain element of creativity from the players, as they essentially function on rails to serve the whole organization of the team. And this is where relationism comes into the picture. The tactics are much less concerned about where you are and what space you're going to attack, but is more interested in what you're doing, how you're moving, and how you're connecting with your teammates. Put simply, the positioning of the players is a lot more free and dynamic, with little concern for an overarching team structure. It's a philosophy that's rooted in South America, made popular by managers such as Fernando Diniz at Fluminense, or Renato Gaucho at Grêmio, but there are also some signs of it making its way into Europe, specifically with Luciano Spalletti at Napoli, Carlo Ancelotti at Real Madrid, or Roger Schmidt with Benfica. Similarly, with our chaos and order spectrum through the years, all modern managers fall somewhere along this line. Guardiola is certainly shifted to the left, but his style is definitely a lot more fluid compared to managers such as Maurizio Sarri, heavily reliant on scripted movements both in and out of possession. Similarly to Guardiola would be managers like Arteta or Xavi, while closer to the centre you can find managers such as Jurgen Klopp, with elements of positional play, but with an aggressive gegenpress that leads to a lot of chaotic attacks. More balanced approaches can also be seen with Ten Hag or Pioli, with strict defensive positioning, but allowing their teams to be more fluid in attack, especially with their rapid counterattacks that are heavily reliant on the relations between the attackers. As we move closer to the right, structure still plays an important part, but individual players change a team's approach. Ancelotti allows his teams more positional freedom and creativity thanks to players such as Vinicius Jr. or Modric with relationist qualities, while Spalletti was also influenced by relationist principles that were able to get the most out of players like Kvaratskhelia. Finally, it's South American managers leading the shift. Scaloni's World Cup winning tactics were heavily reliant on allowing Messi to play where he wanted, and to link up play with his teammate, while the most emblematic examples of this style are Grêmio's Renato Gaucho or Fluminense's Fernando Diniz.
Basicamente, eu acho que isso daí tem a ver mais com como que é o ensino basicamente de né, nossos jogadores, desde de como eles aprenderam, como ele é criança, né? A gente vê que quando a gente joga aqui como criança, a gente joga aquela brincadeira de bobinho, né? Um passa a bola pro outro, um driblar o outro, passa a bola debaixo da perna do outro. É basicamente isso, né? Que a gente faz, né? A gente tenta mais resolver no individual, resolver mais pela proximidade, passar a bola perto, do que esse jogo estruturado, né? Jogo mais o time do que o jogador em si, né?
Interesting is that two teams on opposite ends of the spectrum actually have relatively similar statistics. Take Fluminense and Barcelona. Both average over 60% possession per match. Both are in the top 3 for passes per match in their league, and both rank high for pressing intensity metric. While their approach is completely different, both extremes look to dominate the game in a similar fashion. But while we can sit here and talk about lines and spaces all day when it comes to positionists, the same can't be said about relationists. But that doesn't mean there aren't patterns we can look out for. So what does a relationist style of play actually look like? Well, it's something like this. In its purest form, it's basically street football. Players go wandering. Clusters of teammates emerge on one side of the pitch, while other areas are left completely vacant. Skills and dribbles are encouraged, and an attack can arise at any moment. However, it's worth noting that while there may be a lot of positional freedom, there are still roles players will have to abide to. They may not be confined to specific zones, but you still have defenders, a striker ready to attack in behind, and midfielders that bring the whole team together. But let's go deeper into the main principles and patterns that occur in this philosophy. We'll use Fluminense as an example for this explanation. As stated, their main objective is to control the tempo of the game, which is done with short and quick passes. In fact, by looking at the average length of passes across Europe, South America, and the MLS, Fluminense rank first by far. From goal kicks is arguably the only time the team resembles their starting shape of a 4-2-3-1. But once the first pass is made, the structure goes away very quickly. Beating the press is often done with overload, the attacking set of players joining in and always look to outnumber the press, with third-man passes being key for their ball progression, and this constant overload allows them to slowly move up the pitch. While they rank high for possession, their field
Igual que eu falei, né? A gente é acostumado a jogar essas brincadeiras desde da infância, né? Que a gente joga bola fazendo essa brincadeira bobinha. A gente resolve mais em curto espaço, né? Então, a gente vê que eles se aproximaram mais do jogador ao invés de deixar mais aberto, igual o Guardiola faz, né? Deixar o jogador mais espaçado, cada um vai tentar dar a bola para o lugar mais onde está mais liberado para outro jogar. Aqui, no caso, ele vai liberar a bola para quem está mais perto, tentar resolver mais de perto e, se tiver a chance, driblar e resolver individualmente, né? E passar a bola para resolver fazer o gol, né?
tilt is low compared to other teams, showing how they are not too concerned with moving up the pitch as quickly as possible.
Fazer a tabela,
The vast
né?
majority of their progression is reliant on players making a pass and moving to another position. Some of the principles include the give and go or the 1-2. You often see
Tabela.
midfielders passing the ball forward before running forward with ferocious intensity to receive the ball back in a more advantaged position. These aren't necessarily first-time passes, and it's all about timing and waiting for the perfect moment to make a pass. Another pattern is the diagonal. Players will unexpectedly form diagonal lines that traditional positionist teams would struggle to create. These lines give the team options, as a pass forward could be met with a dummy, giving the receiving player more options to lay the ball off, or the first player
Esse daqui foi interessante, né? Quando ele tá alinhado aqui, né? Ele deixa a bola passar pro outro, ele dribla deixando a bola passar e já pega a bola ali na frente, né?
can simply look for a quick 1-2 and catch the opposition off guard. These diagonals or ladders can appear at any moment, and when they do, they provide the team with an opportunity to progress the ball. With this idea of dummies introduces the heavy reliance on dribbling from relationist team.
Aí também a parte do drible, né? E o cara resolve individual, né?
This season, Fluminense have completed the most successful dribbles than any other team in the league. However, for all these combinations to emerge, the overarching pattern that appears is the idea of tilting, or essentially the team shifting to one side of the pitch to facilitate all of their subsequent play. The vast majority of their progression happens thanks to specific patterns that emerge only thanks to this congested area.
Também tem a ver com o que eu falei, né? Eles se agrupam em um canto, né? Diferente do que tá jogando na Europa, né? Na Europa o pessoal tende a mais espaçar, né? Aí eles estão mais agrupados em um canto só.
And if the team was spread out, like in the case of positional play, diagonals and 1-2s are much harder to execute. With the team tilted to one side, the objective is to use this overload to their advantage. Firstly, the fullback often performs a defensive diagonal and moves inside. If the ball circulates back to the centre back, our instincts tell us to move the ball away, but Fluminense will force play back into this area, circulating possession and waiting for a pattern to appear. We can get a better understanding of tilting by looking at the average position of Fluminense.
Você vê que ele tende ao invés de tentar pegar para a área menos congestionada para começar a jogada, eles voltam para o mesmo local que está congestionado e procuram encontrar aquela mesma posição que vai dar alinhamento entre três jogadores, né? Quando aparecer esses três jogadores, significa que vai dar um tilt, né? Que igual ele falou, que vai dar para eles passarem e ter o prosseguimento para avançar, né? Então eles vão conseguir finalmente avançar e progredir pro gol, né?
Players throughout the match. We can see this vertical cluster of players in the center, but this is because their positioning shifts constantly and regularly from flank to flank.
Você olhar aqui, ó, como que tá mais congestionado em um canto, né? Eles congestionam mais no canto direito ou mais no canto esquerdo. Tá até mais agrupado de verde ali, né? O mapeamento onde mais jogadores caminhou, né? Correu.
Resulting in this rather unique looking pass network. By comparing it to a team like Lazio, we can see how much more spread out the players are with more fixed positioning.
Então ali, ó, como que você pode ver também, né, em relação com o time da Europa, é mais espaçado, né, esse agrupamento aqui, né, ele tá mais liberado do que centralizado ali entre os jogadores, né,
embodies the
centralizado no centro do
asymmetry
campo.
that is so fundamental for a relationist approach, throwing the opposition's defense off balance and creating confusion in their defensive structure. The combinations and style of play that emerge from this philosophy are certainly very entertaining, but will it really become the next big thing? Maybe, probably not. In my opinion, the reason why it's gaining so much popularity in South America is because all kids in the country grow up playing football in this
Igual
way.
tinha falado, né?
On the streets, on small pitches, and using their dribbling technique to outmaneuver the opposition. And so relationism feels like a natural progression of something they're all used to. On the other hand, in European football, positioning and structure are instilled into us from a very young age. and this philosophy is much harder to implement when it doesn't occur naturally in the players. In a time where the Brazilian national team is being criticized for its Europeanness and lack of flair, could relationism be the key to bringing the South American side back to its glory days? Leave your thoughts on relationism in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, why not check out this video on why Liverpool might be turning into a more positionist team next season? As always, if you enjoyed this content, then please leave a like and subscribe.
Bem, basicamente foi esse daí o vídeo dele, né? Ele explicou o ponto de vista dele que o relacionamismo, que eu ia falar, relacionismo, né? Pode trazer o Brasil de volta a ganhar, por exemplo, o Internacional de Clubes, né? A gente vê que faz um tempo aí que o Brasil não ganha, né? A gente vê jogando contra o time europeu, só a gente tá perdendo. A gente vê que nossos times aqui regionais não conseguem ter um resultado apropriado contra o time europeu, né? A gente não conseguiu desenvolver nenhum time que conseguiu bater lá de frente, né? Mesmo atualmente, os maiores times tendo grande receita, né? Como o Flamengo, como o São Paulo, tem algum problema estrutural que está acontecendo. Talvez pode ser a relação da receita deles ali, né? Alguma coisa de desvio de verba, não sei dizer. Ou pode ser exatamente esse caso aqui, tem a ver com a estrutura de jogo dos jogadores, né? Me diga o que você acha desse vídeo. Eu vou ficando aqui. Valeu, falou, tchau, tchau.
With